Okay, welcome to another episode of Affordable Housing and Real Estate Investing. Today we got a legend. We got Jimmy Owl on the podcast today, and Jimmy's one of the first members in the Sub2 community. He has done a ton of creative financing deals, full-time investor as well. Jimmy, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what does your portfolio look like nowadays?
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I've recently been full-time into investing since early 2021, so almost 2 years now. My story is, just growing up as an only child, single mom, grew up mainly in Dallas, and after went to the old traditional route, went to college, actually got an engineering degree, so I'm an engineer by trade. Worked for a tech company immediately after. And, obviously, I always knew that I wanted to do something more than just work, a corporate job. And I always said I wanted to have my own business, but I didn't even know what that meant at the time. I don't even know what business was. It's crazy, right? Because I always think about man, how do people that don't have a structure, when they go to work and they're told what they're supposed to do, and then they go home, how do those people that don't have that kind of structure, how do they make it? And my story is, so I've been following a certain guy from back in high school, and he was always trying to sell people on stuff. He would literally try to sell people fake beats or just anything that he can buy for cheap and just sell for more, right? And I'm like, man, this guy's kind of a bum. He's not really focused on school. He's just kind of messing around. But then I still follow him on Instagram, and after a while, you see his social media just blow up. He's literally just driving nice cars. He has the nice watches, all those things. But he's always posting about his hustle. And then I watched him do an interview once, and he mentioned the word wholesaling.
Wow.
Interview on social media. Yeah. So I didn't even know what that meant. I just literally Googled wholesaling real estate, and I just went down a big rabbit hole. I just kept looking that up, and I'm just like, how is he doing this? Because I know that dude doesn't have, when he started out, I'm sure he doesn't have a lot of money. And so I just did my research, obviously YouTube University and all the free resources. I started listening to Bigger Pockets. And I knew that was a great podcast because they break it down for you even when you're a new listener. And eventually when you start hearing enough of the same lingo over and over, you start to understand what they're talking about. Before, I didn't even know what liens meant. Just explaining a lien to somebody is like, how do you, when I ask people hey, what's a lien? I don't understand this word lien. But now it's I can talk about all this lingo, talk about all these numbers and the terminology. So anyways, I just went down a rabbit hole, and I kept learning. And actually in 2019, I went to a few meetups. I didn't really do anything active. I was really scared to take action, but I was like, okay, based on what I'm hearing so far, I'm going to start with the BRRRR strategy. Because it's really well known. And for those that you don't know what BRRRR is, it stands for buy, rehab, or renovate, rent, refinance, and then repeat.
Yep.
And ideally, right, if you do it right, then you should have no money into the deal when you're done with everything. And sometimes if you do it really well, then you can even get money back. So you're basically being paid to own a property. So I read about it, and I kind of started diving in into hey, okay, how would I find properties? Okay, get on wholesalers list is what I'm being told. And I think I was still kind of learning, and then somehow I came across creative finance. I think there was a website called Propelio, and Propelio is still around, obviously, but Propelio offers a lot of free courses on their website. And so I was just watching, about creative finance, and I was just like I heard about Subject 2 a while back, but I had no idea what that meant. I kind of just blew it off. And then there was another guy that's talking about Subject 2, and I just he broke it down so well for me. He's explained Subject 2, owner finance, seller finance, wraparound mortgages, creating notes, selling notes. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so hooked, because I don't have to go through the BRRRR process to just buy property. I can literally just take
Yeah.
over, basically. Okay, so to explain subject to, right, to backtrack a little bit, subject to is short for subject to the existing mortgage or existing liens. So you're essentially taking over somebody's mortgage, you're leaving their name on the mortgage, and all you're taking is title, ownership.
Mm-hmm.
People get confused. I'm like, hey, is that even legal? Of course it is, right? A mortgage is one
Yep.
document, and a title / deed is another document. So they don't necessarily have to go hand in hand. And now there are some, potential risk with that and liabilities, but if you do it right, then you can pretty much stay protected. So I learned about that, and I was so hooked. Then I just started looking up everybody that was talking about subject to.
Love it.
And I came across, at the time, Pace Morby. He was starting to blow up just a little bit. I mean, like, his social
Mm-hmm.
media was pretty low. Not a lot of people knew that much about him, but he
Yep.
did some interviews, some podcasts, and man, like, I resonated so well with Pace. This dude was literally just giving information away for free that a lot of people, you know, didn't want
That's right.
to just put it out there. And like, he was probably the one person I was following so closely. Like, I was watching everything on his Instagram, his
Mm-hmm.
stories. I was reading all of his old posts. That dude even posted on Bigger Pockets forums, in the
Wow.
early, like, mid 2010s and a little bit later, right? Just kind of understanding what he went through.
Mm-hmm.
And one day he announced that he would have we'd have like a mentorship open. And I literally remember bookmarking the day that it was open because I wanted to sign up right away because I was afraid,
Wow.
hey, this thing might sell out. I don't even know. I don't even know how much it's going to cost, but I'm going to just do it anyways.
Love it.
And before that, I've even bought a couple courses, and that really went nowhere. I paid like $2,000
Mm-hmm.
for a course, I think. I went to one real estate event at the time, and I was so hooked on Pace. But yeah, so after I joined the mentorship, like, literally, I got a deal 3 days later.
That's
Um,
insane.
yeah,
Wow.
and
Well,
I wouldn't say
tell us about your
I,
first deal, man. Tell us a little bit about your first deal. Like, you had a great
dude.
story. You took so much action. You you started off, but you just did start educating yourself for a little bit, right? Just like anybody new in this world, that's
Mhm.
exactly a best first step. But then you actually sought out and resonated with someone that actually knew what they were talking about, and you signed up for
Mhm.
sub two. So once you joined sub two, you got the deal in 3 days. Like, tell us about like what happened. Like, some people would be
Right.
like, "That's impossible. No way, 3 days." Right? Tell us a little bit
Right.
about that story.
Yeah, so I don't want to make it seem like, hey, if you join a course or a program, right, it's automatically going
Mm-hmm.
to work for you. Even if you put in the work, sometimes you may go months without seeing any results. So I've been actually, like, marketing and doing my own cold calling. So I believe the mentorship opened up in May. I think I started doing some
Mm-hmm.
marketing on my own in, like, February/March,
Mm-hmm.
in that time frame. And I was just, cold calling, going through the no's and the rejections.
Mm-hmm.
But I was also trying to apply what I was learning from Pace. And so
Yep.
it just so happened that 3 days in, I got a deal. And when people ask me, explain your first deal, how did it go? Most people are like, hey, I bought it for 100. I wholesaled it for 105, right? But to be
Mm-hmm.
honest, my story is way more complicated than that. It's not a simple transaction. Literally, I have to sit someone down to explain. So essentially
Got
what
it.
happened was I called a bunch of, either on and off market listings, or on market and expired listings. And I was
Mm-hmm.
just calling, hey, I literally said flat out, would you be open to an offer where I give you some cash and I just take over your mortgage?
Mm-hmm.
And I told this seller, and I didn't really think much. She's like, okay, let me just talk to my realtor and I'll get back to you. Right? I didn't think about anything. Next, like an hour or 2 hours later, I get a call back from the realtor saying, hey, you called my client. Can
Mm-hmm.
we get some more information on this? We actually might be interested. And
Oh,
so
okay.
this deal, it's crazy. So this was in May, right? May of 2020. During May of 2020, that's like peak of COVID.
COVID. Yeah.
I was in San Antonio with my girlfriend, who was my girlfriend, right? So we were stuck there. So I was like, hey, you know what? I'm just gonna market in San Antonio, because it's pretty similar to Dallas in terms of price
Mm-hmm.
points and all that, but I don't really know the area. So
Mm-hmm.
the property was in San Antonio. Essentially, I negotiated where I was going to give them the exact amount. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it was 10,000. I was going to give them $10,000 and a little bit of money to the realtor, and my goal was to create wrap the property. So I basically bought a subject to, and then I'm going to sell it on owner finance. So what I did, that's exactly what I did, right? And you know, hearing from Pace and other people, you want to time those transactions at the same time so you don't come any money out of pocket. So what do I mean by that, right? To explain, if I think their mortgage was $200,000, I essentially paid out of pocket $15,000. But while we're in escrow, if I'm going to sell it on a wrap or owner finance it, I'm essentially creating another mortgage on top of the existing mortgage, and I'm going to sell it to someone that, you know, isn't really qualified to get a traditional mortgage. They're called, you know, penalty box buyers, you know, at-risk buyers, you know, subprime mortgages, right? Is essentially what they're called. So these are people that are cash rich, but they don't have Social Security sometimes. They don't have a bank account. These are just cash rich, store money in the mattress type people. And so I was able to find a buyer, and I basically said, okay, I'm going to sell the property to you at $230,000 is what I said. I want 10% down, and I want 8% interest rate, right? At the time, 8% sounded like a lot. I mean, it still is a lot, but I mean, as of this day, it's November 2022. Starting interest rate is like in the 7, 8, 9%. So but at the time, you know, 8% is unheard of, but it's warranted because these people are at risk. So I basically was going to be $15,000 out of pocket. But if I said, hey, if you owe me $230, you're going to pay me $230, put 10% down, that's $23,000. So I essentially pocketed the $23,000 minus the 15, which is what, $8,000. And then I made a spread between what the owner finance buyers were paying me versus what I was paying the mortgage. And I'm still getting paid to this day. It's about like $300.
That's amazing.
And that's me literally not like having to do any property management. I don't have to replace any toilets or replace the roof or AC units. So it's just straight mailbox money. So that's my first deal.
Dude, that's an amazing story, man. Like sometimes we talk about like, hey, just buy and keep in it. But not only did you were so resourceful, man. You figured out how you were going to find another buyer to cover their expenses. So you netted $8,000 and you're still making cash flow. That's a risk-free investment. That's what a lot of people will want in the world. So that's amazing, dude. I mean, so from that first day, let's talk about your portfolio now. Like, what do you have in your portfolio now? What do you own? Is it a mix of long-term rentals, short-term rentals? Tell us a little bit about your portfolio right now.
So, you know, I was going on a buying spree when I first started. I didn't really do any wholesale deals, to be honest. I was just buying as many sub-twos as I possibly could. My entire portfolio is either sub-two, seller finance, or a mixture of both. So right now I have approximately 8 units, and I have 2 owner finance notes. I did have another one, but I sold the note to somebody else. And that's another creative deal too. But so right now I'm at 8 doors, and I feel like right now I'm just kind of focused on generating more, not cash flow, but just a big cash influx to, you know, build my business, right? So build a wholesaling business, build a, you know, real estate holding company business. So right now I realize, hey, it's good to have rentals, but you know, you don't want to overextend yourself if you don't have the proper reserves. And I don't want to have to keep raising money all the time, because I don't want to be over leveraged. I want to have, you know, make sure I have some money in the bank in the event that I can't raise money or whatever, then I still am liquid enough to cover my overhead. So I'm at a point where I haven't bought as many lately, within the past, I guess, almost year. But I'm just right now trying to build up my business.
I mean, dude, it sounds like you're just loading up the bullets right now, man. Like you're trying to acquire and increase your cash reserve so you can buy even more creative deals. So, I mean, you already bought 8 properties, and now you realize like, hey, I think this is really good advice for the listeners out there that you got to have some active income. And even when you have passive income, it's kind of active at the same time. You got to manage the property managers. You got to at least collect the money to make sure like people aren't defaulting, even for some of the notes that you own that you possess right now. So for those 8 units, I want to move the conversation to like your experience as a landlord. And I know you have a few Section 8 rentals right now. Tell us about them. Like, how many Section 8 rentals do you have right now, and how are they going?
Out of those properties, only 2 of them are Section 8. And, I heard from somewhere, I forget exactly where I heard this from, but hey, Section 8, you can actually see how much Section 8 will pay you based on the number of bedrooms you get and based on the zip code that it's in. And so I started doing some research. I had a property that was a 5-bedroom in a really good zip code. And then I had another one that was 3 bedrooms in another great zip code as well. And both of these properties, they are Section 8, but they're from 2 different housing authorities. So when you when you want to do Section 8, let's just say, this is all in DFW. So in Dallas, right, there's a couple of housing authorities. You have the Dallas County Housing Authority, you have Tarrant County Housing Authority, McKinney Housing Authority. So sometimes it's either by the city or by the county. So you kind of just want to look to see what housing authority will probably give you the highest rent rate based on the bedroom. And so I basically did Section 8 at the time. I think for the 5-bedroom property, the monthly payment that I took over was approximately like $1,700, and rent rate in the area was like at the time about $1,800, $1,900. So that's not much, right? Max of $200. I'm like, okay, that's not going to work for me, because I would essentially I would be in the negative, because once I put aside money for expenses, reserves, I don't think I would make any money. So I looked at the Section 8. At the time, I couldn't find the exact, it's called the payment standard or the matrix that tells you how much. Right. But I was like, you know what? I'm seeing that on gosection8.com that 5 bedrooms are going for in this area for maybe $2,100, $2,300. And so I just put it out there on Section 8 for $2,200, right? And someone was interested. I vetted them. And the thing about Section 8 is I did my research. People have this idea that Section 8, if you're renting the Section 8, you might be a slumlord, or you might have bad tenants that are gonna basically beat on your property. But in reality, if the people that you're vetting, if you know that, hey, this person has had their voucher for a couple of years, so to maintain a voucher, you basically have to have good behavior, just follow the rules, good compliance. Good inspections, because the county or the housing authority will come by, do an inspection. They'll make sure that you're not late on your rents, because once you do, the voucher's gone. And to get another voucher, it's like another wait list you have to get on. So it's a process. So this person had their voucher for like 6 years, and I rented it out to them for $2,200. And at the time, Section 8 would cover, I think it was like $2,000 or a little bit more, and their payment to me was like $195.
Wow, isn't that? I mean, and I talk about this all the time, right? A Section 8 voucher is almost like hitting the lottery for a family sometimes, right? I grew up in low-income housing, so I knew how hard it is to get a affordable housing unit. For you, for the family that you helped out, like paying $200 for a $2,200 rent house, that's hitting the jackpot, man. And they get to save money and set aside that money so that you can put food on the table. They can start saving for the kids' college. And I just want to thank you. Like, dude, you are making an amazing difference. And like, I wouldn't be where I am today there aren't more people like you, Jimmy. So I want to start out by thanking you, but I want to also highlight a few points for the listeners, right? You want to go Section 8. That's a really good resource for people to kind of go on to see what they can rent out for, right? Are there any sort of like cautionary tales? Like, I've heard that just because you see it for a certain amount doesn't mean that's the exact amount you can rent out. Any sort of information that you can provide or clarity you can provide to the listeners here about when I go Section 8, what else do I have to look out for?
Right. So how much they get. So you have to, ask to see what kind of voucher do they have. Sometimes they have, let's say, a 2-bedroom voucher, or a 3-bedroom voucher. But if someone has a 3-bedroom voucher, but they're trying to rent your 5-unit, then I'm not saying you can't, lease to them, but you have to see, okay, how much is the Section 8 going to pay? Let's just say they're only going to pay half of what you're charging for rent. Do you feel confident that the tenant will come up with the other half? And at that time, I was like, you know what? I need guaranteed money right now. At the time in 2020 during COVID, times were uncertain. So I wanted to make sure I can get as much guaranteed money as I can. So my goal was to find someone that the housing authority would at least cover my entire mortgage payment, right? So at that time, the mortgage payment was, I think it was $1,700. So I needed to find someone that had a voucher, and what they're allocated, what the the tenant is allowed is based on how much money they make. So they have to go through a process with the housing authority, show them their income, and then they will tell them, hey, yeah, even though on the matrix, the payment standard, a 5-bedroom can go for X amount, the housing authority would only give them, let's say the max was 3,000. The housing authority may only give them 2,000 because based on their income, they could come up with the other 1,000.
Got it.
And side note, I kicked myself in the foot because that was Tarrant County. Someone I talked to had sent me the Dallas County payment standard. And for a 5-bedroom in that zip code, it was going for $3,300. I was so livid when I saw that. $3,300, and I'm renting it for $2,200.
That's $1,000 a month. Oh my God.
Exactly. So that the thing is, like, the government will always compensate those who are willing to provide housing, because housing is always an issue. There's always a shortage of housing. And so that's what the government is doing. They're incentivizing us to provide housing for people that normally wouldn't be able to get it. And so, so when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, that just kicked me in the foot because I just signed a lease with that person. And when I saw that, I was like, wow, I could have leased it for so much more. But hey, so you live and you learn, and now I have tools at my disposal, knowing, hey, which one do I want to leverage? And so, Section 8, I'm sure there are horror stories that people have.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, you just have to be transparent with your tenant, have them be transparent with you as much as possible, and show them that you care, just like any other tenant, right? Maybe send them every now and then, like during the holidays, send them a Christmas card. Let them know, hey, how are you doing? Just want to check in on you. Because if they know that, you're looking out for them, then they're going to try to look out for you by looking after your property.
And that is so important, right? Like, you went above and beyond, Jimmy. And I think this applies to any business you're in. We lost Jimmy, but let me try to finish my point here. So you and any business, you have to go above and beyond and provide an exceptional service offering. What Jimmy did was he built a relationship with his tenant, and he sent Christmas cards, right? Just like with any other business, when you hire employees, you screen them, you do a background check. Jimmy vetted his tenants. He didn't just like pick some random person off the ground. He had to make sure like they were legitimate, they were good people, they were going to take care of the property, they had a track history of a voucher. So I just can't stress this point enough. Like, sometimes in real estate, people just think like just throw someone into an apartment and you just collect a check. That's not the case. You still have to do work, and you have to do some research. Now, in this case, Jim, you might charge a little bit less, but you can still raise the rent later down the road, right? So it's not like you completely lost on it. So
exactly.
All right. So I want to
also another thing.
Go ahead.
Another thing I did. Real quick. So I learned to be really resourceful, right? Just because they put something down on their application doesn't mean that you have to believe everything that they put down. So, for example, I had asked them I think the application asked them for references. And hey, can you put in your previous landlord, put in the property address? So when I called that number, I was like, hey, I was talking to that person. Do you know this? And of course they said good things, but I'm like, you know what? Let me double check. So what I did is I actually skip traced the address, found the real owner who was a different number. And the owner was like, I mean, yeah, she's okay. She has her days. But she was on time for the most part. He didn't really have anything bad to say. But it's still like, she at first put the wrong information down. And I'm like, why did you put the wrong owner down? And maybe that's on me for trusting people. I, basically was like, hey, you know what? I'm still going to take her in. Let's just see how this does. Right. And so far, no complaints.
Got it.
So sometimes you got to go with your gut, but you have to, look out for yourselves, be cautious, making sure that you're doing your research, due diligence, and going above and beyond. Because at the end of the day, no one is going to care more for your property than you will. That's just fact.
Yeah, and you can't blame anybody else, right? Because they put the address on the application, so it's your fault if you didn't skip trace it and find the old owner. Like, you can't blame anybody else. And I think that's such a gem, man. Like, you didn't stop at the application, you didn't take the word for it. You actually went one step above and actually made sure. So, all right. I think with every single podcast, like, people, especially in real estate investing, right, they always talk about the good stuff. Like, So can tell us a good story about being a Section 8 tenant. I mean, landlord, like you're getting the checks on time every month, right? Any other good stories that have come out from your experience investing in real estate and as a Section 8 landlord?
So that property, it's been okay. Not like nothing bad so far. There's another one though. This, you know, I actually met. So one thing, I learned to
Okay.
do is don't present yourself as the owner, right? I always came in and say,
Oh,
hey,
good point.
I work for this company, because I don't want them to think that, hey, if something happens that they can come directly after me. But two,
Mhm.
I always defer to like, hey, it's not my decision. It's based on theirs. It's like a
Mhm.
negotiating power, right? A tactic.
Yep.
Anyways, I met her in person. I just said, hey, I'm just working for this company where, they're wanting to lease out in Section 8. And she was a cool chick. I met her, talked to her. She was a single mom, and she had, I
Mhm.
think, 2 or 3 kids with at least 2 baby daddies.
Yep.
And she straight up told me, yeah, like, I was a stripper, not anymore. But she was funny. She was cool. And I was like, hey, she sounds legit. And then I checked her application, and
Yep.
this one was different. She had just got her voucher, right? And so I had really
I
no prior
see.
history, but I did still check like her. You can skip trace based on their phone
Mhm.
number, their previous addresses.
Mm.
And so I did, do some digging, and I called around the places that she used to rent from, and nobody had
Mhm.
anything bad to say.
Okay.
But since then, I mean, yeah, there's sometimes the property will have things to be fixed, right? That's a given.
Correct.
This one, the AC needed to be fixed. And for some reason, I had like 3 different AC guys out there who could not find what the hell is going on with this property. They come out there, they
Mhm.
would fix the issue. At least they thought they did. And then next,
Mhm.
the tenant's saying it's still hot here. Like my thermostat says, literally it's showing like 85 degrees in here, and it's blowing air the whole time. And so I'm like, what the hell's going on? I even had one contractor replace an entire condenser, and he replaced it for free because he was like coming
What?
back so often, and I paid him all this money to fix it, and he didn't charge me for the condenser. And that can go for like
Wow.
6,000, right?
Yeah, that's
6,000.
expensive.
Yeah. So, and that still wasn't the issues. And the thing is, man, she would like, I get it, but when you're hot, especially in Texas, you just like
Yeah,
it makes you so irritated. But man,
I
she was
understand.
literally texting me novels on through text. When you send someone a long text on iMessage and then it goes
Yep.
to see more, you can expand the text. That's how long it was. It was literally, I could write a book on all the text that she sent me. It was insane. And she would like literally tell me everything that's on her mind. So like, oh my gosh, it's getting so hot right here, and I can't even charge my phone, but I think my phone has an issue, so I have to schedule an appointment with the Apple store. And it's just like, well, I don't need to know those things. And for the most part, right, I didn't even respond. I just tried to like, hey, respond to certain, like specific things that she needed in regards to the property. I didn't want to
Yep.
entertain any of that.
Yep.
But
Because
we
it's not your
finally,
job to.
yeah. And that's another thing, right? You kind of have to learn, hey, I should have probably removed myself and hire a property manager. And I told
Mhm.
myself, yeah, I want to hire a property manager to take care of all these things. But at that time, I was just kind of learning how to be a landlord, because I
Yeah,
think everybody needs to learn the basics before you can delegate, right? So
absolutely.
what you want and what you don't want. And so yeah, I mean, like that was a trip, but we finally found someone that actually found the issue. It
Mhm.
was a pretty easy fix. It wasn't nothing major, honestly. But yeah, I mean, now she's cool. I mean, when she's not, hot and angry.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, that's really it, right? But nothing. And so, but her though, she's really cool. She actually like wanted to make additional improvements, and she would always ask me, "Hey, is it cool like if I add these bushes to the front? Is it cool if
Wow,
I,
okay.
maybe repainted some of the cabinets?" And she showed me some
Mhm.
designs, and I'm like, you know what? Sure. She's literally making the home for herself, because now
Yeah,
she has some sweat and
just getting
emotional
into the
equity
game.
into the property, right? And so
Mhm.
now she thinks that this property is also hers. And so
Mhm.
yeah, if I increase rents, she's gonna be like, wow, if you increase rents, like, do I try to stay here? So who knows? I mean, like, we'll see, right? If she decides to damage the
Mhm.
property, but I don't think she's that
Yeah.
type of person.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's made
And
that
I think
property her own.
Yeah, and I think this is so cool because like you literally your two tenants, you have dispelled all of the rumors or the myths about Section 8 where everybody is out there to cause you problems, to trash a place. And here you have a tenant that's literally making improvements, that's offering to make your landscaping nicer, to paint your kitchen cabinets.
Right.
Like these are just real people, even though there might be voucher holders, they're just real people that's looking for a
Yeah.
stable home to grow up in and to raise their
Yep.
kids, right? So that's beautiful, man. I love that. And I love that you're actually making money on these properties. So you can
Oh yeah.
cash flow. And have
Mhm.
these tenants like stayed with you for the entire time? So they haven't moved out yet, right?
Not yet, no. So
Got it.
their lease is actually about to end pretty soon, at the beginning of the
Hmm.
year. So
Hmm.
obviously, with the rate that inflation's going, these high interest
Hmm.
rates, I do plan on increasing the
Yep.
rents by maybe $250.
Yep.
Um, which is like, yeah, that might seem a lot, but if you come to places like
Hmm.
San Diego or like where I'm living now,
Yep.
rent is like my unit literally is renting for $700 more.
Oh yeah.
So it's insane. But hey, this is just the cost of doing business, and so they've been with me, and anytime that there's an issue, they let me know right away, or sometimes they take care of it on their own and they just let me know. So
Yeah. And I
yeah,
think
like
that's
you
a great
said,
business model.
they're just normal people. They should not be labeled as anything, right? They're just, hey, they have more kids than the amount of money they can make, so somebody, and they don't have another provider in the family, so they
Hmm.
have to seek government assistance.
That's right. And I think this is also a great investment proposition as we head into the recession, which we're technically in one right now, that you're going to get rent on a monthly basis no matter what, despite the situation. So even when you raise rent, right, I'm sure that the government is going to increase their portion of their rent payment as well, right, based on how the payment standards are, based on what you just talked
Right.
about. So it's not like even when you raise it 200, 250, the tenant isn't going to pay an extra 200, 250. They're paying a very small portion of that based on the proportion. Or
Right.
maybe
Right. And the
if their
housing
income didn't
authority
even
is
go up.
reviewing, they're
Mhm,
reviewing on an annual basis. Actually, not even
mhm.
annual, sometimes on a quarterly basis. Hey,
Oh, wow,
are
okay.
we are we like, yeah, so I've gotten multiple adjustments. Hey, now your tenant will be paying this, or now with the tenant will be paying this. It's either higher or lower.
Mm,
But they're always reviewing, hey, has your income changed? Because there's other people that actually need the money. And so there's not,
mhm.
infinite amount of money to go around.
That's
Um,
right.
so, but yeah, I mean, it's been great so far, and I still would continue to do it. And but two tenants, it's a very small sample size, right? You can't just
That's right.
generalize. Right now, yes,
Mhm.
I'm having a positive experience, and I'm gonna have one until I just have one bad apple. That's not just gonna. It's gonna basically fit in the stereotype. But until then, I haven't dealt with that yet.
Yeah, but I think that's just like any business, right? Like
Right.
if you're like customer, like if you're a company like Apple and you have millions and millions of iPhones out there, you're gonna get someone that's dissatisfied with your product, or you're gonna get some people that are
Exactly.
gonna voice their opposition, right? That's just the natural thing of running a business. So that's
Exactly.
awesome, man. Hey, thank you so much for sharing your stories about your Section 8 rental experience. Like, I want to move next into just like helping people get started in investing. And I think you and I had a conversation about mindset a lot, right? So for anyone that's currently thinking about getting started, like what advice do you have for them, like in terms of mindset changes, surrounding with the right people? What's your advice for to someone kind of getting started right now?
Right. Man, so this is like a topic that I love to talk about all the time,
Hmm.
because I had to think about how exactly I thought back then. And so, I heard from a mentor one time, and he said it's not that people lack the resources to succeed; they actually lack
Mm,
the resourcefulness to succeed.
mm, so good.
And when I heard that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Because when if there's something so compelling that's pulling you forward to your goal, you would do whatever it takes, right?
That's
So
right.
to put in, to make an analogy, how is it that crack addicts, they live on the street, they don't have housing, they don't sometimes don't have money, but how is it that they're
Mhm.
always able to get more crack and stay high? Like, how is that possible?
Wow, that's what a great analogy.
I mean, that's resourcefulness, right? Yeah. I mean,
Hmm.
obviously it's not, for their betterment, but at the same time, it's like,
Hmm.
what if we had that same persistence and
Hmm.
intention to go find our, figuratively speaking, crack, whatever that is?
Yep.
And so for me, it's like a lot of people that don't start, they're like, I don't have the money, or I'm going to wait until I have enough money for a 10, 20% down payment. But in reality, if you waited that long, you wouldn't even be buying a property once a year. Sometimes it'd be
That's
once
right.
every other year or once every 3 years. And by the time, if you do the math, you do put in 40 years, right? And you're buying a property every other, that's
Hmm.
what, 20 properties in 40 years. There are people out there that have built, bought 20 properties in a month or in a year
Hmm.
that I've heard about. And so it's like you have to kind of shift on, I can't do that, and instead ask yourself, how can I do that? And
Yep.
there's like a lot of things that play into it, right? It plays into like stuff like, hey, the kind of content that you're consuming on a daily basis,
Hmm.
the kind of people that you hang around with. If you're around with people that are just like, yes, they are better than you. They're
Hmm.
hungrier than you are. They're hardworking, and they have, their goals are aligned with their lifestyle. Then naturally, you will be like that eventually, because you are the law is
Yeah.
you're the average of the 5 people you're around with. But vice versa, if you're with like, some bums, and they're just kind of comfortable, they're plateauing in their lives,
Hmm.
then that doesn't really serve you. And it's not a knock on people that are in that space, right? But
Yep.
it's one thing to just stay there, but it's another to like recognize that you're there and knowing
Hmm.
that you need to get out of there, right? And I think everybody can develop a knack for that. It's not like, hey, someone's born with it. Sometimes it just takes one person, one story, one video that you
Yep.
resonate with, and it changes the trajectory of your career.
Yeah. And I
So,
love
man.
that.
Mhm.
I, d- I mean, that's so beautiful because we always get so scared of taking action, right? But then you just need to be around people that have done it. And like I told you this before, like when I did my first deal, man, I was nauseous, dude. I was getting ready to throw up. But that's because I didn't really have anybody else to talk about this with. Now that you and I are in sub two, and when I hear about your story, Jimmy, is like it's so inspiring because like you took the action, you got around the right people, and you just kept taking action. And
Mhm.
seeing your path, Jimmy, has really enlightened me. Like, okay, if I just keep at it, and I will land my first creative deal. Like I've been in sub two for about a couple months now, and I haven't got my first creative, but I've been able to double down and really just help people. Like, okay, I'm really good at underwriting short-term rentals, right? You don't have to always do this one single path of wholesaling. If you find a way to help people and add value to their lives, like that's what's going to set you apart. And
Right.
being around people is the first thing that you can do right now for all of listeners. Like you can take that step right now and be like, just gonna spend a little bit less time with these people and start trying to meet other people. And that's really it. You just gotta take the first step. We're not asking you to break up with your high school friends or your lifetime
Right.
friends. You can still hang out with them. You just
Mhm.
got to know that there's certain things you don't want to talk about them. Like, how has your friend circle like changed or developed over time? Like, do you find yourself hanging out more around with people that are into business nowadays? Tell us a little bit more about like that.
Yeah, I mean, my fiance gets on to me because she's always like, you can hang out with people even if they don't really serve you a purpose, right? Or hey, they don't,
Okay.
they're not giving you any value. And I told her that that's not exactly what I meant, right?
Hmm.
I meant it as a like, hey, there are people. I'm willing to talk with anybody and be friends with everyone. I would love
Yeah,
to, but obviously we don't have an infinite amount of time here.
that's right.
So you have to prioritize who you want to spend with your time with consistently, because
Mm,
unconsciously the people that you're around, you'll just start to become more and more like them. So if I know that, then I'm going to set myself up for success and really only hang around like consistently for the majority of time with people I know that will elevate me.
that's
And
right.
yeah, I'm not saying that I don't check up on my friends every once in a while, or the ones that I don't talk to as
Mhm,
much anymore. But it's gone to the point where like I've muted, I'm in like a few group chats and I've muted a few of them that don't serve me,
mhm.
honestly, because I used to be the guy that's always trying to be active in the group chat and
Yeah.
always be the funny one and always respond back. But that takes away a lot of time. And then that,
That's right.
your focus is, it's just strived off into something that's not even going towards what your goal
Mhm,
is. And so,
mhm.
yeah, my friends somehow found out, but they understood, right? We
Yeah,
all
that's
have our
that's
own
awesome.
paths. Yeah.
Mhm,
And there's no hard feelings, but I just have to really like, hey, I don't, yeah, people have 24 hours in a day, but in reality, you're not using all 24 hours, right? You're sleeping 8, you're spending time with your family for maybe 2 to 3, you're working out, you're doing all these things. In reality, maybe you only have 10 to 14 hours a day to really work. And so out of those 10, 14 hours, what are you doing? Like, are you just spending time with people that aren't going anywhere? Or do you want to just be around with, it might seem intimidating, but naturally you would just start to become more and more like them because you literally just want to be a match with your colleagues.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I mean, no hard feelings though, but hey, I still talk to everyone. And I have no bad blood with anyone. Hopefully they don't have bad blood with me, but I'm doing this for me, my family.
Yeah. And I think your fiance and my wife would get along too. Like, 'cause she gives me the same advice. She's like, hey, I don't want you to talk about real estate during dinner. And I was like, hey, that's actually okay. Like, I can get a little bit of break during dinner, and maybe I should keep this stuff to myself. And, not everything has to be like all lopsided towards real estate. And I think that's why you and I really get along, is because like we understand this balance that we're in. And we know that we have friend groups that, hey, we can't convince them to do what we're doing, but we can just pave the path and say, hey, when you're ready, here's another option for you, right? And I think that's what our goals are right now in real estate, just to kind of continue marching forward, paving the path. And if our longtime friends from like high school, like everyone to come along, like, hey, we're more than open to teaching them everything we know. And I think that's what the beauty about real estate is. Like, I have met so many giving people like yourself, Jimmy, that is willing to give us the time, willing to give us the friendship and just advice of like, hey, I'm starting new in creative finance. What can I do? And just being the helping hand there. I think I really appreciate that, Jimmy. So
and I'm an open book, man. When people ask me about anything, whether they're a complete stranger or I've known them for a while, I'm not the guy that will shut them down because I feel like they're not worthy of my time. No, like I will respond to them because, hey, I know what it was like to be in that position at one point. That's another thing that, I wish a lot of people would do more of, because that's why I resonated with Pace. Pace is the guy that you follow him. He doesn't follow you back on Instagram. You reach out to him on Instagram and he responds to you. Sometimes his responses are in video because they're so long. So, when I just saw that, I'm like, wow, like why he has all the resources at his disposal.
Yeah.
He literally has all the answers. He's working so hard. He's making all this money. Why is he spending his time educating those that are begging for his attention? Because, hey, he probably recognizes I was at that point once in my life. And personally, I have reached out to a few other people looking for mentors, and I was kind of blown off too. And no hard feelings, but hey, I get it. People don't want to spend that time to teach people. But now I know, like, hey, I'm going to give everybody the same opportunity that I had, because everybody gets a chance to go for it. Hey, if they at least are at a point where they know they want a better life, they know that there's another path to what they're doing, then I'm going to at least reward them for having that thought, right? And hey, maybe I'm not going to give you, maybe I won't be able to give you everything I've learned within the next hour, but I can at least help you point the way. Here's my cell phone number. Let me know if you have any questions. So that's just all I can do.
And I don't know how people need to recognize how valuable that is. Like, it's actually, when people are thinking about starting and they're just so lost, like, you just need to find someone that's doing it and that's willing to offer. And for you and I talked about Section 8, and that's how I realized I was so passionate about it. I caught myself in listening to myself how I was talking about it. And I think that's how I realized I was so passionate about Section 8, because I grew up in it and I wanted to help other people that are in a similar situation so that they can have an equal opportunity in life. And I think for you, rewarding that passion is so important. I think, I don't know, man, it's just so beautiful knowing that
it's contagious.
Hearing you,
it's contagious
how giving
too.
you it is. It really is. Like, when you see other people doing, you're like, oh, wow, he's so giving. Like, I'm just going to keep giving. And I think that's what's so great about our community here in Sub too. It's just, everybody doesn't think they're too good for another person, no matter how new they are. And I think that's that's the tone that comes from the top, obviously. So awesome. Hey, Jimmy, this was an awesome conversation. If people want to reach out to you, if people want to talk more or help you in your business, what do you need in your business right now? And how can people reach out to you?
How I will say this, right? The way you can master something is how you can master something is when you can teach it, right? And it's secondhand. So, hey, if you guys are coming to me and asking for help, I'd be more than happy to show you, because honestly, I'm just perfecting my craft and explaining
Yep.
and trying to help someone else. And so at the end of the day, it is going to benefit me because I am, like I said, I'm mastering it. But also, if people need help underwriting, if people need help to see what's the best exit strategy, talking to
Hmm.
sellers, hey, that's what we do, right? We partner up with those people and we close on their deals. I do buy properties in Texas and Ohio, but if
Hmm.
it's not in those states, then I will still help you, because I'm always curious to see what other situations are out there that I have not come across yet. I feel like I have covered a decent amount, but pretty sure not even close to maybe half of what's possible, right? So I'm always, available to help people out and do
Hmm.
business, because I would love to be a part of everyone's first deal. How amazing would that be?
That's
Because
awesome.
everybody always remembers their first deal. Always.
They do. Just like you remember yours and how well you articulated it, right? And
Right.
that's such a good story, man. No, that's wonderful. Jimmy, should people reach out to you on Instagram? What's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say, I mean, I'm active on Instagram. I don't really post a lot, but I'm always on there. My
Got it.
Instagram is Thy Jimmy, Thy Jimmy. And honestly, if you guys want to shoot me a text, go ahead, right? I get my phone blown up all the time. My number is 972-363-5549.
All
In
right.
San Diego, invest in Texas and Ohio.
All right. Bring Jimmy some deals, guys. Jimmy, this was awesome. Thank you for coming on the show. I think you provided so much value. I hope I can get you back on the show again to talk more about creative finance strategy, since that seems to be your area of expertise. And for people that are looking to invest in real estate, definitely reach out to Jimmy, because this guy really knows his stuff. Thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Ken.